Welcome to Dajobnik.
Douglas Murray, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Great pleasure to be with you.
So I want to start by asking you, you are originally from England, living in London for many years. You can live life very peacefully without fighting for the truth and fighting for what is happening now with the Israel-Gaza war. What makes you come here?
Well, firstly, I'm not sure you can live that happily in London anymore. In London every Saturday, there are huge marches against Israel and against Britain and against America. And certainly my Jewish friends in London believe that the centre of London is not safe to go as a visibly Jewish person or a visibly Jewish family. I think that's an absolute disgrace and have said so for a very long time now. So no, I don't think it is okay being in London, and I don't think it is okay to keep your voice down when you see something like that happening in your own country. My view has always been, book after book and article after article, that what happens in Israel first happens in London and Paris next, and then New York. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's the duty of anyone who notices this to call it out and to identify it. And that's why I've spent so much time here, among other things. I also believe that it's important to be in Israel during the conflict because there's so much misinformation pumped out about this country that you've got to be here to see what's actually the truth.
Yeah, and we're highly appreciative of everything that you're doing to spread out the truth. And I would like to talk to you about the misinformation that you were mentioning, because when we're opening international media day after day, most of the coverage would be around Gaza, about the population of Gaza, about the Palestinians, as if we didn't just 4 months ago experience the largest terror attack of the establishment of the State of Israel. How do you explain that?
Well, it's been happening since the 8th of October. I mean, on the 8th of October, the world's media was saying, what is Israel's response going to be? How brutal is it going to be? How disproportionate will it be? I expect that. I think most Israelis expect that now. The world is much less interested in what is done to Israel than in the question of what Israel does in retaliation. We've seen this for years, the barrages of rockets from Gaza ever since the withdrawal. The Hamas and other groups fired rockets into Gaza, from Gaza, into Israel. Sometimes that's reported, but if Israel fires a rocket back, it's Israel strikes Gaza. Mm-hmm. That's again, they miss the prelude and they go straight on to the response.
And why is that? Because in the eyes of the international media, there's a weak side and a strong side, and that's it?
It's partly that. It's partly just this stupid thing of our era that came from America, that everyone can be divided into oppressor and oppressed, colonizer and colonized. It's ridiculous. And it doesn't work in this region. It doesn't work anywhere. But it's partly that. I'd say it's also partly, as you know, there's a journalistic reason, which is that if you're a Western journalist and you want to report on Hamas in Gaza, that's pretty tricky, very dangerous. Very, very few people have done it, and the ones who do are compromised and don't really admit it. Whereas if you sit in a nice hotel in East Jerusalem, naming no names, you can be at the cocktail bar and you can go outside and you can put on your flak jacket and you can say you're reporting from the occupied territory of East Jerusalem. And your colleagues back home in London and New York will say, wow, this is a war correspondent.
So, yeah, 100%. So what do you think Israel should do in order to win this war on PR?
Well, the first thing to say is that Israel has been I've covered most wars involving Israel since 2006. It's important to say that this communication strategy during this war is infinitely better than Israel has ever managed before. If this was the 2006 conflict and you'd had something like the Shifa affair, it would have taken months to wring the information out of the IDF and others about what the Shifa complex actually was. This time, it seems to me that the Israelis realize this is a media war as well as a real war, an actual war. And the response, in my mind, has been really very, very impressive from Israel. Now, everybody believes they know how to run Israeli PR or Hasbara. Everyone has a view on that. I just think it's worth noting when things are going better as well as when they're not. Some of this, on the question of where we are now, some of this is a numbers game. How many billion Muslims are there in the world? How many Jews? very outnumbered.
Yeah, we're very outnumbered.
So what can you do in that situation? The one thing really is to just try to make sure that the truth always pierces through. I have this belief, I wouldn't do this if I didn't believe it, that the truth really does pierce through 1,000 lies. And increasingly, also, there's a very, very important job to remind publics in the rest of the world that this is about Israel now, everybody else next. And it's not like that's hard to communicate. Israel's enemies and the West's enemies say it with their own mouths, day in, day out. I don't need to tell you that.
Yep.
The rest of the world just needs to hear that and to know that whether it's Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, the IRGC, they not only say it, but they mean it. And if the rest of the world realizes that, and they will, then I think their sympathy towards Israel might grow.
They don't only say it, but they mean it. And we see all the chanting of Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. Yet again, we're seeing President Biden pushing towards giving the Palestinian a state now after this horrific terror attack. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's amazing. I've written about this in my New York Post column, among other places. It's amazing to me that the Americans are pushing on the two-state solution, and the Brits are pushing on the two-state solution straight after October 7th. I mean, my belief is that the Palestinians were already given a state. They were given one in 2005, and we all know what we got. Okay, so they decide, so Cameron, Sunak, Blinken and Biden decide that after the 7th of October, there should be another state given to the Palestinians. I don't agree with that. I don't believe that. I think, among other things, it incentivizes terror. It obviously incentivizes it. I mean, what if there's another 7th of October? Should they be given another state? How many states they want? It incentivizes the terror. It says, as a result of the 7th of October, we'll give you this thing that we believe you want. But the real thing is that Western governments are stuck in an utterly dead paradigm. It's like hearing somebody speaking ancient Greek at this point. To talk about the two-state solution now is just fairyland, in my view.
When we know the Palestinians are actually paying salaries to the terrorists of Hamas, to the Nukhba terrorists.
Right, as you've written about. I mean, this is one of the great scandals. It's not addressed enough outside of Israel, probably not enough inside Israel either. And then you have the problem that these Western governments are effectively, they're trying a strategy which has failed, and it's been proven to have failed. We all know that if there was an election tomorrow in the West Bank, Hamas would win. Okay, so there's a problem in the West Bank as well. It's not just a Gaza issue, it's the West Bank. They don't concede that. Why? Because for all of these decades, we've heard the same chant from Western leaders. If you give the Palestinians another state, every problem in the Middle East will be solved. The wider Middle East, they all say this, the left wing, right wing, they've said for a generation, if you give the Palestinians a state, every other issue in the Middle East will be solved. Yemen's economy will suddenly blossom. The mullahs in Tehran will suddenly recognize women have rights, and so on and so on. It's obviously nonsensical. You just have another failed Arab state, in my view. But the fact that they keep saying this, despite all of the evidence, suggests they are simply way, way out of date. And by the way, can I just say quickly, if you want another example of how out of date they are, the country I'm from, the United Kingdom, its official foreign policy, foreign office advice is that the Golan Heights are still occupied territory.
Wow.
Okay, that's the official foreign office view in London. Now, I have pointed out for years to my friends in London, go to the Golan Heights and you will see, first of all, this is not occupied, this is Israel. Secondly, if you believe it's occupied, who would you like to give it to? Now, since 2011, Bashar al-Assad has killed as many people as he can. Do you want to give him more territory to kill people in? Do you think that Syria isn't big enough for his ambitions and he should also have the Golan Heights to play with? It's nonsensical. But it's an example of the fact they're all in London, Washington. They are dealing in dead paradigms. And I urge them to catch up to reality.
Unbelievable, simply unbelievable. I'm curious to hear your opinion about this internal debate that we have in Israel about Israel sending hundreds of trucks of aids and fuel and gas into the Gaza Strip. And you have Israelis demonstrating against it. You have an internal debate saying, how come one country is giving aid to its enemy? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a very curious situation for any country to be in. During the Falklands War, small war as that is, the British government did not give aid to the Argentine government. During the Second World War, we in Britain did not give aid to the Nazis. We didn't worry if they were running out of fuel or supplies. Quite to the contrary, we wanted them to.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, Israel is in a unique situation for two reasons. One is, of course, that in the age of modern warfare and in the era of media warfare, all you need are these bad pictures from Gaza of people displaced, and you've got the headline on the evening news across the world. The reason why they're displaced, nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
Very few people say that's on Hamas. The other thing is that, of course, this country is held, as Prime Minister Netanyahu said when I interviewed him the other week, is held not to a double standard, but a triple standard. There's a standard that the world's autocracies and despotisms are held to. Putin can kind of do what he wants because he's a dictator, and what are you going to do? The world's democracies are held to a different standard. Britain and America, when we're involved in conflicts, are definitely held to a different standard. Maybe that's right, maybe it's wrong. But there's a third standard to which Israel is held, which has to be superior to any other democracy. As I say, Britain would not give aid to our enemies in a conflict. No way. America would not give aid to its enemies in a conflict. No way. Why do people expect that Israel should? This baffles me, but it's a question for psychiatrists, in my view.
Yeah, I want to really thank you, Douglas Murray, for coming to our studio and speaking up for the truth and for Israel. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Dejobnik signing off.